Hi. Now I'd like to explain the difference between deviant behavior and crime. And this is a tricky one for some students to understand, so I like to go over it. First thing I like to talk about, sociologists spend a lot of time talking about mores and folkways. And one of the things I like to go over, folkways are the correct way of doing things because they're a habit or a tradition. And so, for example, in the United States, when we meet people, we tend to shake their hand. And if you hold your hand out and somebody doesn't shake it, we kind of take that as an insult. That would be an example of one of our folkways. And really, to me, what distinguishes the folkways from the mores, folkways are, you'll get some type of mild ridicule if you violate one. Somebody will say something to you about it. Now, a more is a social norm that gives the group its moral standards. And so if you violate one of these, there's going to be some sort of severe punishment. You can get expelled from college, you can be forced to leave a fraternity, you can be thrown out of the military, things of that nature if you violate a more, which is considered a more serious offense. And then, of course, sociologists like to talk about a taboo, which is one where violating it is so horrible people don't even like to discuss it. People don't even like to talk about that type of behavior. So, and that would be a taboo, something that's that bad. Now, one of the things I like to talk about that I find fascinating with deviant behavior. Remember that deviant behavior is anything that violates a social norm. And by that, simply that means what is normal for that community or for that society. Violating that is considered deviant behavior. A man showing up in a dress would be deviant, for example. Now, the things that I find interesting with it is that, first of all, some things are deviant, but they're not against the law, which is fascinating to me, and vice versa. Some things are against the law, but we don't look down on people who violate them. And also, what is considered deviant in one culture is acceptable in another. And then also consider this, that sometimes something is deviant or criminal, and then over time it becomes more acceptable. Give that some thought. Also remember, if you move around the United States, as I have, you find that some things are more acceptable in some places than others. Some communities are more liberal and some are more conservative, depending on religious beliefs and political beliefs and things of that nature. So I always like to tell my class some of the things that were once illegal that are now legal. For example, abortion, which is a very controversial issue, but that was once a crime in the United States and now it's legal. And of course there are still people who feel that it should be illegal. And some things that were legal are now considered illegal. In my lifetime, I have noticed the attitude towards alcohol and smoking has changed incredibly. I always find it interesting when people are smoking a cigarette and I light up a cigar and they get upset at me. I always find that fascinating. For example, I grew up in a small town in Kansas, 7,000 people, and it was pretty common for guys to drive around with an open can of beer in their truck or on the tractor or what have you. And in the mid-'80s, when I graduated from high school, that of course changed. Police began to crack down hard on open containers, drunk driving, things of that nature, and I began to realize our attitude towards drinking in the United States was taking a change. One of the stories I like to tell my classes, and this again shows my age, but the Andy Griffith Show, I have an aunt that just lives for that, she loved that show when it was on, but in the mid-'80s, Ron Howard, who played Opie on the show, he created a movie, A Return to Mayberry, where the cast was reunited. And the thing I found fascinating was the part of Otis the Drunk. Remember the TV show aired in 1960, it ran for about 6 years. There was a main character who would stumble in drunk and let himself into the jail, sober up, and he had a key and he let himself out again. The producers that produced The Return to Mayberry said that he could only be on the show if he was now a recovering alcoholic who no longer drank. They said alcoholism was no longer a funny thing to them, and then that would have to change. So, again, so attitude towards smoking, drinking has changed over time. When I was in college, we used to go to Las Vegas a lot to gamble and what have you, and now I'm amazed that there's casinos all over the place. Almost every state now seems to have a casino. So it seems that our attitude towards gambling has changed radically in the United States in my lifetime. Let's see. So one of the things I have students do in class then, we write up on the chalkboard, I have them make a list. I have them make a list of things that are deviant and things that are criminal, and I try to have them do those kind of things. And so remember, deviant behavior can be things somebody does with their clothes. Again, I always think of how juveniles alter their clothes or their hair or something like that to be noticed, a purple mohawk, that kind of thing, something to be noticed. And so deviant behavior, some people put things such as strippers. Some people consider that a deviant occupation, and that type of thing. And remember, some deviant behavior is essentially harmless. Somebody who likes to talk to themselves, things of that nature. Things that are odd, things that are unusual, would be seen as deviant. I hope this has helped you understand the difference between deviant behavior and crime. More to follow. Thanks.